enhancing the contrast on these three animals in the middle foreground. Hopefully that's bringing them forward, adding to the sense of depth in the painting. And that first cow that I painted back here is hopefully looking more and more distant. Hi everyone, I'm Mike, and this is the Sunday Art Show. Each Sunday I post a video, and this could either be a real-time demo, it could be a tutorial, it could be a plein air adventure, or sometimes a combination of all three. I paint quite a wide range of subjects, including animals, landscapes, and portraits. And I use a reasonably wide range of media as well, including conventional acrylic, interactive acrylic, watercolour, ink tints, pencil, biro, alcohol markers, Sharpie markers, and sometimes I just combine all of these. And then what I'm going to do is, having loaded my brush with that lighter version, I'm just going to drag one edge of my brush into the darker version. And we'll block in this rolling hill that we've got here. Now, to be honest with you, that's looking a lot darker than I intended. So I'm going to grab more of the tinting white. I'll keep that acrylic blendable by just spraying it with the water bottle. And let's put this lighter colour on and see what that looks like. That's a bit more what I had in mind. But what I'll do is I'll leave a little bit of that darker colour exposed. Perhaps it's a line of trees or something. The main thing is I want a fairly subdued colour for these distant hills. That's going to help me create a sense of depth. So by subdued, I mean it's a fairly pale colour. I'm just going to add a bit of the cerulean blue now to that same mixture. It's, you know, not too bright, and it's fairly cool in colour as well. And then I'll go back closer to the colour I used over there. Again, it's a little darker. I picked up the dark version. That was unintentional. Let's mix it back in with the light. And, you know, that's okay. We can have a bit of variation as we go from one side of the hill to the other. And I think, you know, for those distant hills, that's probably all I'll do. Now, these diagonal marks I'm putting down at the moment, I'm doing it in this way for two reasons. One is I want to leave some of the underlying watercolour showing. I think it's creating some interesting texture, but also they're subtle perspective lines which will hopefully lead the eye in from this corner towards this central animal. So we'll get a little bit more water on the palette, a touch more on the painting. And we'll go a little bit darker this time. So I'll take some more of the cerulean blue. And, oh, that was the red. I meant to go for the yellow. So we're going to have a touch of red in there now, but that's probably okay. Let's see what this green looks like when we put it down on the painting. So similar technique, but I'm just going to vary my brush strokes a little bit to vary the texture. And I'll keep those perspective lines going, but they won't be sort of diagonal lines like that. There'll be lines, or an array of almost vertical lines, but generally speaking leading towards that central animal that's lying down. So the idea is that the eye will be led to this animal and then off into the distance towards that very distant animal. And I'm just going to block in the silhouette of that animal in this cool, fairly pale blue colour. I mean, it's darker than the background, but it's by no means a dark blue. Now, the idea here is to use the cool colour as a mid-tone for the animal. So later on, what I'll do is add a few darks and highlights. I may even do that in a moment, actually. But the main thing is this sort of mid-tone, the base colour, is nice and cool, nice and pale. So that's going to help push the animal off into the distance. Then what we'll do is we'll come back to the right-hand animal, and I'm just going to put in some lines of shadow here and there on the underside of the animal. So under the belly there, and in the kind of the crease of the rear leg. And next, I'm just going to add some touches of pure tinting white to begin to introduce some fairly soft highlights. And so hopefully what is happening, by gradually adding a bit more detail, some shadows which are, you know, stronger than the shadows on this animal, some highlights which are brighter, you know, thereby enhancing the contrast on these three animals in the middle foreground. Hopefully that's bringing them forward, adding to the sense of depth in the painting. And that first cow that I painted back here is hopefully looking more and more distant. I have sprayed the surface of the water with surface of the painting with water again. And what I'm trying to be fairly considered about at this stage is, obviously this titanium white is as bright as I can go. So I want to use it relatively sparingly, even though I'm painting an animal which, you know, has a reasonable amount of white in it. So by using the paint in a fairly thick way, but being very gentle with the brush and considered with the way I'm putting the brush down on the paper, I can get characterful marks rather than just solid lines or patches of white. Now, we started off this painting by painting the most distant cow blue, even though, you know, the object isn't actually blue. So we don't need to follow reality exactly. You know, we can be expressive and we can play around with colours to try and achieve the effect we want in our painting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just taking some orange straight out of the tube, and, you know, this colour is not present on the foreground cow, but there's no reason I can't just add a few little licks of this bright orange, which is obviously a warm colour. So that's going to tend to bring this cow on the far left further forward in the painting. Now the other thing is the orange is complementary to the blue palette that I've used to describe the majority of this animal. So it's just kind of making the blue look bluer, and the blue will make the orange stand out, and hopefully it's going to give a little bit of a shimmer. But again, there's nowhere else in the painting where there's such a strong complementary color pair. So it tends to draw your eye more to this left-hand animal, and that tends to, obviously make you focus on that more. And so again, that means that these other animals kind of slip into your peripheral vision a little bit, so they seem more distant. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to hit the like button, and I hope to see you next Sunday for the next episode of the Sunday Art Show. Thanks very much for watching.